The Justice League has Superman, they have Wonder Woman, they have the Flash, they have literal gods, aliens, and metahumans with powers that defy physics. And then they have a guy in a bat costume with zero superpowers who stands as their equal. Let me explain how that's even possible. Batman, Bruce Wayne, debuted in Detective Comics number 27 in May 1939, created by Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and everything about his origin is built on a single night of trauma. When he was 8 years old, he watched his parents Thomas and Martha Wayne get murdered in Crime Alley. That event didn't just break him, it gave him a mission. He disappeared for 12 years, trained across the globe in martial arts, detective work, forensic science, engineering, and psychology. By the time he returned to Gotham at age 20, he'd turned himself into the most dangerous human being on the planet through nothing but obsessive preparation. He's a founding member of the Justice League alongside Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, and Aquaman in 1960. Every single one of them has superhuman abilities. Batman, zero. He's fighting alongside gods with nothing but training and willpower. He maintains a strict no-killing rule that defines his entire methodology. It's not a guideline, it's the line he will never cross. That rule has shaped everything about how he operates and how he built the entire Bat family. But Bruce Wayne didn't do any of this alone. He had one person who was there from the beginning, keeping him grounded when the obsession threatened to consume him completely. Alfred Pennyworth. The most powerful person in the Bat family doesn't wear a cape, he wears a suit. Alfred Thaddeus Crane. Pennyworth first appeared in Batman number 16 back in April 1943, and from day one, he's been the only person Batman actually listens to. Not because Alfred is physically stronger, not because he's a better detective, but because Bruce Wayne trusts him more than anyone alive. Alfred raised every single Robin who lived under Wayne Manor's roof. Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, all of them. He's been the moral compass of the entire family, frequently talking Batman down from crossing ethical lines or spiraling into darkness. And here's the thing, Batman actually stops when Alfred tells him to. Nobody else gets that authority, but Alfred isn't just a butler with good advice. He's trained in medicine, engineering, technology, reconnaissance, and hand-to-hand combat. The man can stitch up a punctured lung, hack a security system, and knock someone unconscious if necessary. He just chooses to serve tea instead. Alfred is Batman's only true equal. He can override Batman's decisions and make them stick. He's the anchor that keeps the entire family from falling apart. Without him, the Bat family doesn't function, period. But if you think one stabilizing force is impressive, wait until you see the vigilante who rewrote what it means to be a sidekick. Batgirl. Barbara Gordon is either the toughest member of the Bat family or proof that DC has no idea what to do with disabled characters. And I can prove it. She debuted in Detective Comics number 359 in January 1967 as a librarian who taught herself martial arts and decided to fight crime in Gotham, standard origin. But then in 1988, the Killing Joke happened. The Joker shot her through the spine, paralyzed her from the waist down, and turned her into a pawn in his psychological torture of Batman and Commissioner Gordon. Brutal, unnecessary, and it defined her character for the next 23 years. But here's where it gets interesting. Barbara didn't quit. She became Oracle, the information broker for the entire superhero community, not just Gotham, the entire DC universe. She ran operations for the Justice League, coordinated the Birds of Prey, and became arguably more powerful as Oracle than she ever was as Batgirl. She had access to every database, every satellite, every communication channel on the planet. Batman relied on her. Superman relied on her. Everyone did. Then in 2011, DC's New 52 relaunch gave her experimental surgery and put her back in the Batgirl costume. Some fans celebrated the return. Others saw it as erasing one of comics' most significant disability representation storylines. The debate still rages. Multiple characters have worn the Batgirl mantle since, but Barbara remains the primary Batgirl in current continuity. At least her story evolved beyond just being Batman's sidekick, unlike the second Robin, who literally got beaten to death with a crowbar by readers who voted for it to happen. Nightwing Dick Grayson is proof that sidekicks don't have to stay sidekicks forever, and I can prove it. He debuted as Nightwing in Tales of the Teen Titans number 44 in July 1984, designed by George Perez, and it instantly became one of comics' most successful character evolutions. Before that, he was Robin, the original sidekick, the template every other Robin was built from. But by his late teens, he'd outgrown the role. He didn't want to be Batman's shadow anymore. He wanted his own identity. So he became Nightwing. Blue and black costume, acrobatic fighting style inherited from his circus days as a flying Grayson, and a completely different energy than Batman. Where Bruce is dark and brooding, Dick is optimistic and charismatic. He's the counterbalance to Batman's entire personality. He leads the Teen Titans and later the Titans, establishing himself as the most senior member of the next generation of heroes. Not because he's the strongest or the smartest, but because people actually want to follow him, which is something Batman has never been great at. Dick Grayson became the ideal leader where Bruce couldn't. He proved that growing beyond your mentor isn't betrayal, it's evolution. And every sidekick who came after him followed that same template. But if you think one acrobat with people skills is impressive, wait until you hear about the hacker who spoiled her own father's crimes. Spoiler, Stephanie Brown has worn more superhero mantles than anyone else in the Bat family, and somehow she's still the most underestimated person in the room. She started as Spoiler in Detective Comics number 647 back in August 1992, created by Chuck Dixon and Tom Lyle with one very specific goal: stop her crime lord father Cluemaster from committing crimes by spoiling his plans anonymously. Basic, direct, effective. But here's where it gets complicated. Stephanie didn't just stay Spoiler. She became Robin 4 for a brief stint, then took the Batgirl mantle, then went back to Spoiler. 3 distinct identities. Nobody else in the family has done that. Not Dick, not Tim, not Barbara, just her. And before you think that makes her indecisive, hear me out. Each transition happened because she refused to stay in a box. Batman tried to put her in. She's headstrong, independent, and openly defiant of Batman's authority in ways other sidekicks never were. Dick listened, Tim obeyed, Jason rebelled but left. Stephanie stayed and pushed back. Then came War Games in 2004 to 2005, which is where things get dark. The storyline was controversial for its depiction of violence against her character and the narrative consequences that followed. Fans are still divided on whether it was necessary storytelling or gratuitous brutality, but what came after is what matters. Later, writers rehabilitated her character, gave her agency again, and proved she could survive the worst the writers threw at her and come back stronger. Stephanie Brown is proof that determination beats pedigree every single time. At least she chose her mantles, unlike the next member of the family who was literally bred to kill. Orphan. Cassandra Cain is either the most dangerous member of the Bat family or the most tragic, depending on how you look at it. And I can prove it. She was raised from birth by her father David Cain to be the perfect weapon. No verbal language training, no social interaction, just combat, pure, relentless combat. Her entire childhood was spent learning to read body language with such precision that she can predict an opponent's moves milliseconds before they execute them by analyzing muscle tension and micro expressions with 99% accuracy. That's not hyperbole, that's her actual documented ability. But here's the kicker. She can't speak. The training that made her the world's greatest martial artist also left her completely mute. She communicates through sign language, written notes, and later in her arc, modified speech development. So the person who understands human movement better than anyone on Earth has almost zero ability to connect with humans verbally. She debuted in Batman number 567 in July 1999 and operated as Batgirl from 1999 to 2006 before cycling through Black Bat and eventually adopting the orphan mantle. The community appreciates her as genuine disability representation, though there's active debate about whether her combat abilities push into over overpowered territory compared to the rest of the family. At least she doesn't murder people anymore, unlike the next guy who came back from the dead specifically to do that. Red Hood, Jason Todd, died for our sins and came back angrier. And honestly, fair. The entire modern Batman mythology balances on one question. What happens when someone who agrees with Batman's mission completely rejects Batman's methods? Jason Todd is that question in a leather jacket. He was Robin number 2 back in the 1980s, got beaten to death by the Joker with a crowbar in 1988, stayed dead for over a decade, then got resurrected by Ra's al Ghul via Lazarus Pit in 2005. He came back wrong. Or maybe he came back right, depending on who you ask. Jason took the Red Hood name from the original villain who acid-faced the Joker, which is poetic in the worst possible way. He positions himself as Gotham's crime lord with a heart. He kills drug dealers, pimps, human traffickers. He protects civilians. He just does it with bullets instead of batarangs. And that's the entire problem. Batman won't kill, Jason will. They both want to save Gotham. One of them thinks the other is naive. The other thinks the first one is a monster. Neither is wrong. Here's the thing though. Jason Todd has one of the most devoted fan bases in contemporary DC Comics, despite being the guy who breaks the one rule everyone agrees Batman should never break. The fan base sees him as misunderstood, traumatized, doing what needs to be done when Batman won't. In universe, he's controversial. Out of universe, he's beloved. He leads the Outlaws with Arsenal and Starfire. And those team-ups are some of the most consistently entertaining comics DC publishes. But at least Jason's moral code is consistent, unlike the next member of the family who got kicked out of the military for loving the wrong person and decided to become a vigilante about it. Batwoman. Kate Kane is one of the most dangerous fighters in Gotham, and nobody talks about her enough. She's military trained, strategically brilliant, and operates on a completely different wavelength than Batman. Where Bruce investigates crime scenes and tracks down clues, Kate runs tactical operations like she's commanding a unit in the field, because that's exactly what she trained to do at West Point. She was expelled from West Point Military Academy under Don't Ask, Don't Tell for being gay, which is about as dystopian as pre-2011 America gets. After that, she spent years traveling the world, training with military experts and special forces operatives, racking up actual combat experience outside official channels, and brought all of that training into Gotham when she took on the Batwoman mantle in 2006. Her approach to vigilantism isn't detective work, it's systematic warfare. She doesn't solve mysteries, she executes missions. And here's the thing, Kate Kane is explicitly Jewish and gay, making her one of the most significant LGBTQ+ and religious representation figures in the entire Bat family. She's not a side character or a token, she's a fully realized commander who happens to also be one of Gotham's best hand-to-hand fighters. Fans and experts consistently rank her as equal to Batman and Cassandra Cain in pure combat effectiveness, which is saying something when you're standing next to the world's greatest martial artist. But if you're waiting to see her get the mainstream recognition she deserves in films or TV shows, you'll be waiting a while. She's criminally underutilized compared to the rest of the family, which is frustrating because her military background, tactical brilliance, and representation make her one of the most interesting characters in the entire roster. At least she's better utilized than the next member of the family, who had to fight tooth and nail just to prove he belonged here at all. Robin. Damian Wayne is either Batman's greatest triumph or his biggest mistake, depending on who you ask in the fandom. There is no middle ground. He first appeared in Batman number 655 in 2006, created by Grant Morrison and Andy Kubert. deserved. But unlike every Robin before him, Damian didn't earn the cape through tragedy or skill. He was born into it. Son of Batman and Talia al Ghul, raised by the League of Assassins from birth, he showed up in Gotham at age 10 as a fully trained assassin with zero empathy and an aristocratic attitude that made everyone want to punch him. And here's the thing, he was lethal. The youngest Robin in the entire family, but with more formal combat training than any predecessor. Dick learned acrobatics, Jason learned street fighting, Tim learned detective work. Damian learned how to kill efficiently before he could write in cursive. His arrival created massive conflict with the existing Robins because his methods were dangerous and his personality was insufferable. He had a distinctive accent, genius level intelligence, and complete disdain for human life. Early Damian would straight up stab you and not understand why Batman had a problem with it. But that's what makes his arc compelling. Damian Wayne is the biological heir to Batman, which creates narrative tension about whether he'll become Batman or transcend that role entirely. He officially became Robin in 2009, and over years with Bruce in the family, you watch him soften. He goes from psychopath in training to genuinely caring about people. It's slow, it's painful, and it's one of the best character growth arcs in the entire Bat family. The fandom is split hard. Some people appreciate his complexity and development. Others think his early arrogance is irredeemable, but at least Damian chose to grow, unlike the next Robin on this list, who had to fight for the title no one wanted to give him. Red Robin Tim Drake is the only person in history who figured out Batman's secret identity through pure detective work. Not because Batman told him, not because he stumbled into the Batcave. At 9 years old, he watched Dick Grayson perform a quadruple somersault on TV, recognized it as the same move Robin used in grainy news footage, and reverse engineered the entire Bat family from there. That's insane. He first appeared in Batman number 436 in August 1989, became Robin 3 in 1990, and eventually took on the Red Robin mantle in 2009 when Damian inherited the Robin title. And unlike every other member of the family, Tim has zero superpowers, no meta-human abilities, no enhanced anything, just his brain, his training, and Batman-level tech. He's considered the world's second best detective after Bruce himself, with expertise in forensics, psychology, engineering, and computer science that rivals actual professionals in those fields. The Red Robin costume, black and red with that small R insignia, visually separates him from his Robin days. Some fans argue it's a downgrade. Others think it finally gave him room to operate as Batman's intellectual equal instead of just another sidekick. Either way, the frustration is real that he's barely touched in recent films when he's arguably the most strategically minded member of the entire family. But if you think deducing Batman's identity is impressive, wait until you hear about the girl who built her own vigilante career from scratch with zero training. Let's talk Bluebird. Harper Row doesn't ask permission, she just builds what she needs and goes to work. While every other member of the Bat family got recruited, trained, or inherited a mantle, Harper looked at her neighborhood in the Narrows, decided someone needed to protect it, and started welding her own tech together in her apartment. No formal invitation, no fancy cave, just a soldering iron and a lot of nerve. She first appeared in Batman number 1, volume 2, back in September 2011, created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo during the New 52 era. What makes her different is that she's not trying to be Batman. She's not even trying to join the Bat family officially. She's a grassroots vigilante who operates independently, creates her own weapons and costume from scratch, and builds her own network of allies, most notably Red Hood, who actually respects the DIY approach. Her story also includes her younger brother, Cullen, coming out as gay. which provided significant LGBTQ plus representation through a primary character's family rather than relegating it to background characters. Harper's entire arc is about self-made heroism, community protection on a street level, and refusing to wait for someone else to save her neighborhood. The frustrating part is how underutilized she remains. Harper represents a bridge between street-level vigilantism and the cape and cowl world, someone who builds her own path instead of inheriting one. She's proof that you don't need Batman's approval or training to make a difference. You just need the will to act and the skills to follow through. But if you think operating solo in the Narrows is challenging, try being the Robin who had to earn Batman's trust after starting as a villain. Signal Duke Thomas is either the future of Batman's operation or proof that not every member of the Bat family actually needs to exist. And I can prove it. First appearing in Batman Volume 2, number 21 back in August 2013, Duke became Batman's official daytime vigilante after being orphaned during the Endgame storyline and subsequently adopted by Bruce Wayne. He operates under the Signal mantle, wearing a bright yellow costume with a searchlight symbol, which is about as subtle as wearing a neon sign that says, "Please shoot me." His entire premise is that Batman needed someone to fight crime during daylight hours, which raises the obvious question, why doesn't Batman just sleep less? Here's where it gets interesting. Duke isn't like the other Robins who trained for years in martial arts and detective work. He's got abilities related to understanding light frequencies and advanced technology, making him more of a tech specialist than a traditional vigilante. But the practical effectiveness of a daytime vigilante in Gotham remains heavily debated. Most of Gotham's worst criminals operate at night, specifically because Batman operates at night. The entire criminal ecosystem adapted to Batman's schedule decades ago. Duke represents racial diversity in the Bat family and brings a modern, tech-forward approach that's distinct from Batman's old-school detective methods. But he's also one of the youngest and least established members, with only about a decade of publication history compared to characters like Nightwing, who've been around for 40+ years. The fanbase appreciates his unique niche, but many wonder if that niche actually solves a problem Gotham had in the first place. So Duke Thomas is either the evolution of Batman's model into a 24-hour operation, or he's the answer to a question nobody was asking. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.